but Keanu Reeves is in it, so how bad could it be?
How bad could it be?
Hi everybody, welcome back to Christravaganza. Today, we watched a movie that I absolutely will never watch again, except for when I have to edit this video.
Lucky you.
Actually, really though, lucky me that you're here today, because we watched this movie last night, and a thing happens, and I clocked out, and Sarah continued to pay attention like a good movie viewer.
At what point did you clock out?
It was a 2-hour movie, and I remember you got up to check the timeline, and you were like, we're 50 minutes in, and I was like, we're only halfway there! Yay! Maybe 15 minutes after that I was like, bye. I remember one very distinct part, and then nothing else until you called my attention to something else that had happened that we will talk about. Meanwhile, we're filming this as San Diego Comic-Con is coming to a close, and last night was the Marvel panel, so Elise Murray tagged me in information about Thor, Love and Thunder, and
that's why you got distracted.
Stopped watching the movie, yeah.
There was a point where she became incoherent with laughter.
Right.
Some sort of mix of laughter and temporary madness?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's talk about what Street Kings is.
Right. We watched Street Kings from 2008. It was directed by David Ayer,
who you might know from the other movies he's directed, such as Suicide Squad and Bright. And what was the other one?
I don't know,
particularly...
but not good movies.
Yeah, he wrote Training Day, co-wrote The Fast and the Furious, and then directed Street Kings, other action movies that all have very generic, swappable names. I think he's got a type.
Yeah.
It's about how cops suck, and how they're corrupt.
But they're also the heroes, the cops are the heroes and the villains. There's there's literally two types of people in this movie.
You're not exaggerating about that. All of the players are cops, basically.
Yeah.
Except for common street criminals.
Yeah, those are the two kinds of people in this movie. There's the people of color who are mostly criminals, and Forrest Whitaker, who's a cop, or cops. And that's kind of it.
And I mean, there were a few other officers of color on the team, but
right.
it was weird. Terry Crews is in it. Not for very long.
No.
Tom Ludlow, Keanu Reeves, a veteran member of the LAPD, is still mourning the loss of his wife and trying to navigate through a world that does not make much sense anymore. I would argue against that because we don't even learn that his wife is dead until 30 minutes into the movie. It's brought up twice, maybe 3 times. I would hardly attribute it as character motivation.
Plot, yeah. He's not trying to get revenge on her killer.
No.
Or anything.
When evidence implicates him in the death of a fellow officer, Terry Crews, Ludlow begins to question the loyalties of everyone around him. Okay, that makes it sound way more interesting than it actually is.
And from what I remember, it's at different points in the movie, he is and isn't okay with the other cops trying to help him cover up the fact that he might have helped kill this other cop. I think I clocked out just because I couldn't tell if he wanted their help covering it up or if he was just nope, I'm gonna be the one to do it.
For the longest time, this didn't feel like a movie.
Yeah.
It felt like a pilot for a gritty police procedural. And it just kept going, which is not what you want. From the very beginning, they're very into making sure that you know that this is a gritty cop movie because it's dark and there's lots of yellow and green color coding to make you feel uncomfortable, and there's lots of swearing and racial slurs and homophobic slurs and guns, and there's a lot of gun violence in this.
Yeah.
Given how much violence and how much actually happened throughout the course of the movie, it's kind of impressive that it was so boring.
Yeah. I've got all of 4 pros and a lot more cons. And then if you remember things that I haven't written down, we'll get to those.
Go ahead.
Our 4 pros are Keanu Reeves, which almost immediately was not so much a pro. I just happen to like Keanu Reeves.
We like the people who are in the cast that we knew, Forrest Whitaker, Keanu Reeves, Terry Crews, Chris Evans, and Naomi Harris, who plays Terry Crews' character's wife. So, a fun cast. All doing stuff that
is not fun.
That is not fun. I mean, Forrest Whitaker does a good job as spoiler, the villain. There were only so many characters.
Right. You liked Keanu Reeves shirt at the very opening.
Yeah, so the opening, he wears this striped shirt for like a minute, and I liked that shirt.
Terry Crews.
Terry Crews.
And also, you wanted me to write down...
If it ain't LA's deadliest white boy.
And this is already after we've gotten like maybe about 10 slurs or so.
Yeah.
It just really wants to make sure that, you know that this is an edgy film.
Yeah.
They're gonna swear, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And we're like, well, we can't. I don't think I've ever personally seen Terry Crews in anything where...
He's not playing a character named Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was fine for the 10 minutes that he was in the movie before he gets shredded by a machine gun in a convenience store.
The next pro is Chris, and then I wrote who doesn't curse, but then I scratched it out because he does. But he looks grown up. That was your thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been kind of making comments about how all of the Chris movies so far, I feel like he hasn't gotten, like, the right stylist. Because I don't really feel like there have been any movies, and you've told me that he's very handsome and cellular, which, like, okay. To me, he just looks like a super buff version of Sean from Psych. I have just been unimpressed by the way that he's been styled in these other movies, given how handsome he is. In this movie, he shows up, and I actually felt like, oh, this looks a little bit like the Chris that we know.
The last pro is Grace, Keanu Reeves' girlfriend, who's a nurse.
Girlfriend.
Right.
They never say it, but, like, they have something going on. I mean, it certainly seems like they are already together. Like,
Right.
they definitely already have, like, have had an ongoing relationship, but, like, their romantic thing is not at all involved in this movie.
He kind of just uses her as a sounding board.
And to show that he feels things, I guess. Occasionally. It doesn't happen very often.
We just liked her.
We liked her. She's nice.
Those are all of the pros. We are now on cons.
Women are, like, just barely objects.
Yeah.
We've got, like, kidnapped sex slave girls that Keanu Reeves rescues at the beginning from the dark, scary Asian men who he slaughters and then makes sure to plant and stage certain evidence so that it looks like he didn't just kick down the door and kill them all.
That's why, like, I'm so confused about whether or not this movie is pro or against cops.
I don't think the movie knows. I just think that the movie thinks that cops are cool, as is to be expected with brutish kind of movies like this.
Yeah.
There were a lot of comments made by the male characters about how much they would like to rape other female, I would say characters, but there's really only 2 female characters.
He drinks and drives multiple times throughout the movie.
Like, literally, we're not talking like he's intoxicated, he gets in the car and he drives. No,
He's
it's like
a
he's
mini bottle
literally,
of vodka.
literally driving and drinking his airplane bottles of alcohol.
Because he's sad and depressed
And dangerous.
still has to go do his job.
Something you're kind of taught in creative writing is that, like, your story is like the day it was different. That's not what this story is. Like, this story is just a time. There's absolutely nothing to connect with emotionally. With the exception of the story that we hear about, like, how his wife, like, died, apparently in the middle of cheating on him.
Cool.
Oh, you missed that part.
I kind of picked it up when he goes to the coroner and the coroner's like,
It's not my job to investigate adultery. How can I help you?
and that's kind of the last thing I remember that they say about it.
So they follow up on that later. It's the second or maybe third time his wife is mentioned in the entire movie. It's a significant portion into the movie. That's by the time we meet Chris.
Yeah.
Which, like, Chris doesn't come in for a little while.
And I remember sitting there for like at least 20 minutes being like, where's my boy?
And I mean, it takes maybe 30 or 40 minutes for him to even show up into the movie, and that's the first time that we ever hear about Keanu Reeves' dead wife. So it's not like there's really anything for us to connect with him about for a long time. You know, actually, maybe that's a pro. He doesn't seem to harbor any anger at the fact that she was cheating on him. It never comes up, but whatever. It's like the least misogynistic thing in this movie.
Such a low bar.
Such a low bar. Washington is apparently talking with Internal Affairs about the squad that he used to be a part of. He used to be Keanu Reeves' partner.
They take it personally, but just from what I remember, it seems to be that he's like ratting them out because they're dirty cops, not necessarily because he's just mad that they forgot about him.
Because he's just a jerk.
The team makes it out to seem like he's ratting them out because he's angry that they like kicked him out of their squad or whatever.
Who's Washington giving up? You thought? Why now? Because I shit canned him from the unit and he's a vindictive bastard.
But I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that it's because they're all dirty cops.
Yeah. And it's not like we don't know that from the very beginning. We know that he is willing to like plant and falsify evidence. We see him brutalize people before we even know he's a cop. But so he's apparently talking to Internal Affairs about Keanu Reeves' character. Keanu Reeves at one point like decides to follow him so that he can break his jaw really and like kind of just beat him around, and I'm like, good luck with that, Keanu Reeves. I'd like to see you try. And he follows him into a convenience store, and as he walks in he notices that two guys with guns are coming in to rob the store, so he goes in, tries to warn Terry Crews of what's about to happen. Terry Crews doesn't really believe him and believes that Keanu Reeves is there to kill him, which it's a reasonable assumption. The guys robbing the store come in and not just shoot him with both of their machine guns, but like empty the entire thing.
Brutally murder him in a convenience store.
Then they leave. Keanu Reeves like rushes to his side to be like, Washington, let's go, like stay with me. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. He is gone. But like, I think the film kind of wanted us to think that he was still like clinging to life. The conflict really comes about because this character dies that Keanu Reeves doesn't really care about and does not really like. You would think that the next step would be, he's being framed for this, there's no footage, so it's entirely Keanu Reeves' word against, common sense. But that's not the case. The footage from the store clearly shows him entering before and attempting to like kind of get Washington to leave, and then shows Keanu Reeves like running and Terry Crews being murdered. Forrest Whitaker, who's the police chief who like really likes Keanu Reeves, is like, hey, we make this footage disappear and it won't implicate you at all. And I think the idea was that like, it looks like he hired those guys, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of needlessly complicated.
The coroner mentions that there were 3 different bullets inside of...
From 3 different guns.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 gunmen.
And part of the footage was that, like, Keanu Reeves, like, comes around the corner, Washington, like, smacks him, and then is, like, laying over him before the 2 other gunmen come in. And I think between that and the other 2 gunmen, one of Keanu Reeves' bullets shoots Washington.
I can't remember if we ever actually get an answer to that. If
but like,
we did,
where else
I
would
didn't...
this 3rd bullet come from?
Yeah, I feel like that could have been set up a little bit more to be reasonable of like, I don't know, did this happen? Or like, I can see why people would think, looking at the footage, that this happened. But like, to me, it just didn't make any sense. That's not what the footage looked like to me. But I would argue that if I had to be paying attention for, you know, that extra 3 seconds that I might have looked away during that scene, that the movie should maybe rely on some other things to build tension and conflict and for the story to work. But it's just me. The rest of the story is then, like, they cover that up, but then Keanu Reeves decides, like, I want to find out who murdered him because he was a cop and those guys are cop killers. Otherwise, there's nothing going on in the movie, so we gotta get to it. It's just an incredibly boring story because there are no, like, stakes. You don't care about the outcome, so it's very difficult to write a compelling story when you do not care about what happens to the main character. Because, like, the main character is, like... I mean, Keanu Reeves' charm will only take us so far. I don't know if he was racist or if just the movie was racist.
I mean, he straight up says that he's racist, but I know what you're saying.
He and Terry Crews have this weird conversation where, like, Terry Crews is, like, points out the fact that, like, he just slaughtered all of these, like, scary Asian men or whatever.
Instead of, like, letting them go to trial, which is, you know, what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and he implies that Keanu Reeves is racist, and then Keanu Reeves is, like, rebuttal to that is like...
Because I'm a racist.
It's like in this weird sarcastic way, and it's not really ever brought up again. It's weird.
I wrote down Keanu saves missing girls from big bad Asian men, and it's not... The con is not that he saves the girls, it's that he kills all of the men of color because of these girls. They're criminals, and they need to be tried for their crimes.
And I mean, like, the movies very much wants you to see, like, how terrible these guys are. I think the biggest problem is not that, like, people of color never commit crimes. It's a tired, boring, racist trope that really
Right.
just helps reinforce
And
to
what's
white
weird-
people that, like, people of color commit more crimes
Yeah.
than they actually do.
What's
like,
weird about this movie is that the people that aren't cops that are committing crimes are all people of color.
Yeah.
But then almost all of the cops are white except for like
a couple.
like maybe 3 of them.
Some of it's hard to tell because of the color grading.
The next one is Police Mumbo Jumbo.
I mean, the dialogue in this movie is certainly just
I want something to red pin by midnight.
weird, like,
Give me your goddamn burner now.
code and slang to a point where it's like
Indecipherable.
Game books, mug shots, 211 reports.
there are stretches of time where it's like, just speak words.
Put it in layman's terms for the people in the audience that aren't freaking cops.
It's almost like this movie thinks that they don't actually have to write compelling dialogue if they write dialogue that nobody can understand.
Piece of shit. You got a 187 on a peace officer and you're f***ing letting the suspects walk.
It also just deals with themes that are incredibly generic. Like,
Yeah.
just like, what if cops corrupt? It's not really very interesting even now.
No.
Like, it's not really doing anything meaningful with it. And like, even Forrest Whitaker's motivation of like,
Open it up. Tear it down. This is my power.
I'm like, wow, so you did it for money? How original! Like, I've never heard that one before. When you are, like, watching a movie, and the character on screen Googles cop movie, this is the fake movie that shows up.
Yeah.
Because it's so generic.
The next one is Hugh Laurie and Toxic Masculinity, because the first time Hugh Laurie shows up,
He gives some
Tell-
great dating advice
Yeah.
that's super creepy.
She was a waitress at a jazz bar. I'd sit in her section. She'd change sections. I'd change tables.
I just have to say, as somebody that works in the service industry at the moment,
That
like,
will not work.
it won't work. It's very creepy. It's not charming. Just don't do it. There was a line about,
Cop who burns cops.
and I was very confused, and now I realize that he was talking about Hugh Laurie, so he was talking about like,
There's a cop that holds other cops accountable. How dare he?
yeah, it's always the cops who hold other cops accountable that are like
Seen as like
villainized.
snitches.
Yeah,
and-
when
Well,
that should be like part of their job.
I just think it's funny that there's this big thing about how, like, cops who snitch on other cops' illegal behavior, they suck. And I'm like, don't do the illegal behavior, guys!
There's some very tonally extreme music.
Oh my god, the music was so bad.
Like,
The kind of music that I would expect to be, like, building or, like, some sort of percussive kind of sound was always, like, just very, very loud, like, rock music. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know if that's a product of it being made in 2008 or if they just, like, have really shit taste in music.
right, or
It
there was like that very intense, like, suspense song that played while they were doing the aerial shot of the coroner's
I know!
office.
That was my favorite shot of the whole movie!
Why did
So-
we need an aerial view of the coroner's office?
Maybe that's another reason it reminded me of a TV show, was like those
Right.
kinds of, like,
That's like a TV transition.
yeah,
Right.
like the B-roll of, like, the city and like, this is where we are
I
now,
mean,
location-wise.
That's how
like,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like, thrives.
it's not that, like, that doesn't happen in plenty of movies and it's not a problem there. It's just like, here, there's an incredibly, how would we describe it? Like, grandiose? Like, weirdly grandiose
Yeah.
shot of, like, this aerial of LA. And then it zooms all the way down to the sign for the coroner's office. And we're like, you would think that something really interesting is about to happen at the coroner's office. We spend 5 minutes there and we just talk, and
Yeah.
it's nothing. It was so boring. And there seems to be no regard for choices like that. Like,
Right.
that kind of shot would be much more fitting for, like, a big showdown or something big that's about to happen. Like, even the scene where, like, he's following Terry Crews to the convenience store where he
Right.
later gets shot. That introduction into the scene would make much more sense because
Right.
it's a bigger, like, climactic and dramatic scene.
Very bad cops. Just like, okay.
They're all corrupt.
Yeah.
They suck.
Oh, and Keanu says, we can do whatever the hell we want because they're cops. And we were like, no, you can't. I mean, you think you can, and you get away with it because you're dirty cops. But, like, You're not supposed to do whatever you can. That's not what your job is.
You know what the funny thing about this movie is? If it came out today, I imagine there would be a lot of Blue Lives Matter people who would be like, this is anti-cop propaganda. And I'm like, I really think that the movie's stance about the police establishment is not cops are good or bad. It's cops are cool and violence is cool.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Mixed metaphors.
That scene where like Hugh Laurie like goes really hard on this metaphor about like
Every time you shit the bed, Wander's there to change the sheets.
and then he completely like the next sentence within the same breath switches to an entirely different metaphor.
I'm gonna pour gas on you. Everyone at Vice Special. Then I'm lighting the match and I'm gonna burn all of you.
But like you don't need two metaphors right in a row.
You're not actually making the point you think you are because you didn't stick with the one metaphor and you went into something completely different.
I remember the first one because it actually tells us something about the characters.
Right.
Like, it accurately conveys the relationship between Keanu Reeves and Forrest Whitaker in this movie. And I was like, that's clever and insightful, and it's kind of funny. And then he just completely abandons it to be like, I'm gonna wash you all out. No, wait, that actually continues with the metaphor. I wrote something better just on the fly accidentally than they did. It's just another example of the dialogue being really poorly written.
Yeah.
Just on a line-by-line basis of like, people don't speak like this, but even if they did, it's boring.
Yeah.
Like,
I just wrote down Chris's sunglasses because I hated them. They remind me of like NASCAR for some reason.
What the hell?
I hate it so much.
okay.
Keanu is bad at his job. I don't remember why I wrote that down.
You mean besides the fact that he's corrupt and
Yeah.
very eager to murder people?
That's probably it.
Or was it the part where he hit the guy with the phone, where he broke into the guy's house and hit him with the phone book until he gave him the information he wanted?
I mean, that was probably part of it.
I mean, there was also the part where like Chris Evans comes into the locker room and says like, so Washington was dirty, and I can't even, I don't think that matters by the end. And then Keanu like attacks him and like, he's like, I see what you're trying to do, you're trying to trick me! And Chris Evans like, God, you're crazy, what the hell?
Like,
and then Keanu's like, no, I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to trick me. And then Chris Evans continues to trust him, and I'm like, what?
There's a lot of establishment stuff that I'm just like, part of his job should be like mandatory therapy sessions.
Probably.
If they're going to like force him to go out and kill people, he should also be forced to endure therapy.
You know what? But you know what those cops would say? They'd say
Oh, yeah.
therapy's for girls.
Yeah.
If you don't
They are.
actively like murder, then you're a coward.
Yeah,
Like, what the fuck?
That's what David Ayer would say too, so it's fine. This is such a waste of Chris and Keanu.
Want to say it for the millionth time. It's just such a boring, nothing story. It's
Yeah.
just a sequence of events that happen. There's no change from beginning to end, except that more people are dead.
Including Chris, and that's the last con that I have written down.
Because that's when you stopped watching.
I had already stopped watching. You called my attention back to the screen as he was dying, and I was like, thanks for that. You also said that he died because he was stupid, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay.
Because I missed the context.
Well, so like, they're looking for these guys, right, that they think murdered Washington, and then surprise, they find the dead bodies of them, and they've been dead for way too long to have actually killed him. And so we're like, okay, so there are these other guys running around using the same names for whatever reason. Cedric the Entertainer takes them to meet these guys. They're very scary, they're very macho.
Is one of them common?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And like, they're sitting there and, you know, they're trying to like trick them because it seems that like Washington was giving them inside police information. And Keanu is like, hey, I'll do the same thing, but not really. I'm just doing this to trick you. I didn't entirely pay attention to the conversation because they were not saying anything. They were just talking. And at some point, Chris is like,
No, wait. I know these guys.
and then the two guys like shoot Chris Evans. And I'm like, you
So he's
idiot.
just not good at his detective
So
job.
he's just not good at keeping his mouth shut, and that's why they all almost get killed. And by all almost, I mean not Keanu Reeves. Like, everybody else dies but Keanu Reeves. I mean, Chris Evans is actually, like, I think that on paper he's a supporting character.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, he's kind of bland, and so it's hard to feel like he's actually part of the movie instead of just a thing that Keanu takes with him from scene to scene.
Yeah.
His girlfriend's like so worried because the news says that
Detective Tom Ludlow is wanted in connection with the shooting deaths of 2 undercover deputy sheriffs.
they're apparently cops. The guys who we thought were the big bad guys were actually cops. And Keanu Reeves is like, oh my god, I killed a cop. I'm a cop killer. Because that's always a thing in these movies. Because cops are sacred, you know. Then 2 cops from his unit show up to arrest him. And you think like, oh, well, they're all corrupt, so they're going to let him go. And they're going to explain everything. And no, it actually turns out that those guys are dirty. And they're going to take him up to the top of a hill to kill and bury him.
They're supposed to punch your ticket. Well, you punched theirs. Yeah, now we gotta punch yours. Up in the hills, brother.
And they make rapey comments about what they're going to do to his girlfriend when Keanu Reeves is dead. And I'm like, I would say that it's a way of showing that those guys are evil. But like comments have been made about women like throughout that entire movie. And even if that was the reason that those lines were employed, that doesn't make them like okay. So the cops have him. He very nearly successfully runs them off the road and escapes, but he doesn't, so it's almost pointless that we have this weird thing where he like tries to like kill one of the guys while they're driving a car. So there's a lot of car swervy action that's, I don't know, it really gets the blood pumping. Some time passes, he's tied up, he still manages to kill the 2 guys.
This is still going!
And like, then there's something else that happens where like another guy from his unit, he like goes and confronts him and then kills him. And he finds out that Forrest Whitaker, who he thought was his buddy, is all behind it, because of course he is. So Keanu Reeves like breaks into Forrest Whitaker's house,
Tears down the wall,
and shoots Forrest Whitaker. Like a lot more happens, but that's what happens. And then Hugh Laurie shows up and is like, "I'm not gonna arrest you, Keanu Reeves, because I just think that we could make this all go away." I'm like, okay, so the guy who's the head of internal affairs seems to also be corrupt, and like what? And then the movie ends. So what I'm saying is nothing happens. There is no narrative change. There's no character change from beginning to end. Just a sequence of events happen. Yeah. They were filmed. And we watched them. I don't think all of it is just us not paying attention. I think that some of it is like genuinely like badly written.
Yeah.
This is the movie where you go to like Walmart and you see the $5 movie bin and you like dig all the way around and you see like Denzel Washington movies you've never heard of, and you see action police comedies and you see ripoffs of Disney movies. This movie belongs in that bin.
Just David Ayer. Why are people still giving him money to do things?
This was in 2008 though. You know what, you bring up a good point though. Like, why did anybody think that he would be great to direct like Suicide Squad and Bright after he made this movie, which is bad?
Stop giving mediocre white guys the jobs that other people can do. Oh yeah, okay, so we didn't actually pick the arbitrary rank beforehand this time. Sarah has suggested maybe picking it on screen and seeing how that goes.
Yeah.
So why don't you do that?
Let's hope it's a good one. And Suddenly I'm Helpless asked, does a girl bite her lip or twirl her hair?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Like we said, there's like 2 women in this movie. One of them's already dead before the movie starts. So I guess it's 3 if you count the dead wife.
That would have been good for like the Nanny Diaries or for What's Your Number or something.
Yeah.
These scores are really disappointing, but not surprising given how many movie critics are white men. The IMDb score is a 6.8. The Rotten Tomatoes score is a 5.11. Both of those are out of 10. My score is, I thought about this, I'm only giving it a 2 because Chris.
I think I'm going to go for a 2 as well because I gave it a 1 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Right. The total points for Street Kings is 15.91 out of possible 40. Neither of us had ever seen this, and we will never see it again, except for while I'm editing. And the next movie is The Loss of a Teardrop Diamond. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please click the bell below so you don't miss any of our future videos, including Christravaganza. And if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do that down below as well.
We make videos about pop culture and Disney, and for the rest of this year, Chris Evans movies. Join us.
Maybe the rest of my life.
One of us will see you real soon.